Most of us who knew or knew of Tessa Maskell are aware she passed away last week. There was a blank space after Davina Mizrak signed in from London, where Tessa would have often voiced her presence. Her son, James Maskell, posted on Instagram these words: "My mother, Tessa Elizabeth Maskell, has taken the next step in her journey. So grateful to have spent 4 profound days together at the end of this week. The greatest compliment I can give her is that she inspired my curiosity and then life's work, and she was way ahead of her time." James's father, Rupert Maskell, wrote in an email, "Tessa passed away June 30th, painlessly and in the company of our beloved son, James, at Heathrow Airport. Her heart simply wasn't in continuing life as an invalid, either in English or South African nursing homes. Her spirit was too fiercely independent for that. Her heart simply stopped beating, and she was gone." So many emails and calls have since come in. I never fully appreciated how great an impact she'd had on so many lives. People who knew Tessa would find it humorous and apropos, as she was wont to say, that she made her exit in an airport departure lounge. How very Tessa. Joyce Krantz, one of Tessa's many close friends, has some insights to share with us.
Thank you, John. Can you hear me okay? Coincidentally, just as the music stopped and after our roll call, I heard sounds coming from outside my window, and a parade of golf carts in red, white, and blue, about 15, paraded down the street, turned around the cul-de-sac, and continued on. A celebration of Independence Day. And I thought, how apropos for Tessa. As Rupert said, Tessa was very independent. She lived a free life and a global life. So I am delighted to share a few minutes honoring her. My comments will be mostly centered on the latter decade of her life. I've known Tessa for many, many years, but our paths did not intersect in a very personal and intimate way until the last chapter of her time here on Earth. All of us probably could tell stories. If Tessa crossed your path, you would remember Tessa. As John said, she's a large spirit. I mean, people that would describe her said her spirit was indomitable. She was fierce. To me, she was like a lioness. She actually was born in South Africa. It seems very appropriate that the lion should represent Tessa's spirit. She was determined, directed, and she was comfortable on the leading edge of change. If we were to put her in a category, Tessa was a mover and a shaker. She was a force of nature. But the most outstanding thing that we know of Tessa is that her passionate heart was centered in the truth. That's what she loved. That's where her heart almost was like, had radar towards the truth. She was looking for the truth. And when someone said the truth, if someone spoke the truth, it was like all the wires in her nervous system lit up. And it was a life-changing moment, you know, a breakthrough. That was terrific. I think the phrase has been used, well, man, yeah, I never saw it before that was life-changing. That is revelatory. And it happened all the time in her life. It never stopped. Tessa had a purpose-driven life. She wanted to make her time count and play her part in awakening people to the truth of who they are. Who are you and why are you here? I have to share a story with you that I think depicts this beautifully. Tessa, in her last place of residence, was in Santler Court in a little town in Malvern, England. It was a residence for 55 and older active adults. She had her own condo. It was beautiful. It looked out on a beautiful garden courtyard, and across the way was a wing of the building, which had a beautiful gathering room, meeting room. And they would have tea at certain times of the week. And Tessa was looking forward to that when she got settled into Santler, that she was headed over to tea to meet her fellow residents in the building. So Tessa had her first tea and she came back, and later I'm communicating with her and I said, well, how did it go? You know, and her comment was, When Tessa said, it meant that there was room for improvement. And she said, I think I can do better. If you know Tessa, Tessa did not like a lot of small talk. I mean, she wanted to get to the core of things, talk meaningfully about how you saw life. So she went to the director of the teas, and one who was in focus, and said, would you mind if I took over the next tea, focus the tea for the gathering? They said, oh no, absolutely, sure, we'd be delighted. So when the tea time came, the residents arrived and Tessa had them sit in a circle with their teacups and whatever they ate for tea. And Tessa asked the question, well, she introduced herself and she said, I'm really looking forward to getting to know all of you. And I thought a way we could do this and to know more about you and your world is, I think we should go around and everybody say something of what they are thankful for. And if you don't feel like talking, that is absolutely fine. But those of you that want to give it a little thought, maybe you could share with us what you were thankful for. Well, by the end of that tea, people were coming up to Tessa and saying, oh my goodness, Tessa, you just opened my heart. I just never even knew some of these people in their worlds. And they said, when can we do it again? Tessa always loved a collaboration and working together. And she felt that when you bring people together into a circle, if you have a solid foundation, what is true? And from there, things could open up. And what more solid than to introduce what is thankful in our hearts, what uplifts our hearts. Well, as we know, Tessa joined us and was a core member of the work that we did here consciously through the tone of life. And often we heard her comments, it was always thrilling. And what was the next phase? How could she awaken others? In 2017, Larry and I flew over to England to visit Tessa. And we had a marvelous experience of touring around the Cotswolds and in the area where Tessa had lived and dwelled in various places. And in some of these places she took us to, there were people that knew Tessa. And for me, it was very obvious to me that Tessa was royalty. They greeted her with respect and great appreciation and fondness. Tessa held herself with great dignity, and she spoke with this English accent, or South African anyway. It was beautifully distinct and clear, and it commanded something. And I told Tessa, I used to joke with her. I said, Tessa, you could read the phone book and people would stop and turn around and look at you because they felt the authority of your presence. That's the effect she had on people. I'm not sure if Tessa had thought that her time was completely up yet. She was actually on a flight to Cape Town, where arrangements had been made for a new residence for her. She didn't make that. She took a detour. And I thought, before I went to bed, I was blessing her, and I was consciously thinking, she's on the flight, she's headed to Cape Town. I woke up in the morning and found out, nope, she left at Heathrow. And I thought, what poetic symbolism that is. And this is what came to me. Tessa was sitting in her chair. She nodded off. She took her last breath. And she was in the hub of one of the largest international airports in the world, right in the middle there. Tessa was a global citizen. She had no reservations about flying. In fact, for flying for Tessa to far and wide places in the world, getting on a plane and going somewhere else was like going from one room of her house to the next. So in one sense, the airport was a bit of home. It was a way of establishing her connections, her meridian grid throughout the world. And when she went to these places, she touched thousands and thousands of people's lives, and thousands of hearts and thousands of minds, and inspired them and uplifted them the best way she could. This time, her flight was not horizontally, but it was vertically. And she was always centered vertically in the sense of her alignment with what was true and looking for what that resonant substance was in other people, no matter what their race, creed, culture was. All were part of Tessa's field. And because she was a networker, that was her gift. She lit up the network. And I have thought in these last few days, after I got over the surprise of her exit, was I could feel this wave in her ascension is like an updraft. And it's true for all of us. in this case, all those live connections, those wires, those meridian grids that she's established in the earth are all moving upwards in the updraft in her wake. And the ascension process of all that is real and true is made new. And in sense, it's as I be lifted up, shall draw all men to me. And that is the expression of Tessa's spirit. I think that's a cycle that we're in right now, is celebrating that which is true and that which is enduring, which will remain while we're here, even in her absence. So I am delighted to be able to just focus a little bit of Tessa's heart and her deep passion for life, for truth, for the reason that she was here. Clearly, never went to sleep in that regard. She was absolutely true. And I know I share with all of you and our continued living in that wake, in that tone, expressing it through ourselves while we're here, and continuing on with the job that she's done so beautifully. So with that, John, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Joyce. Tessa embodied the saying, "Wonders never cease." I'm going to read a short excerpt from Martin Exeter's Being the Fire from August 15th, 1982. It offers an angelic perspective on life in human form. The word soul, as used in this transcript, is the same use as appears in the story in the book of Genesis of the original creation of humanity. Soul refers to the human body, mind, and heart, which the individual angel of life creates and sustains for his or her own expression on earth. Quote, "We do not necessarily anticipate that this human soul is going to live forever. I think that it is inevitable that it would change. In fact, I don't know that as an angel of life, we'd want the human soul as it now is to hang around us forever. It's useful now. It may be useful tomorrow. It may even be useful next year, possibly 10 years from hence. Who knows? All that is of concern to us is that we should be in position to make right use of it. Making right use of it, we are present in mind and heart and body in order to make right use of the environment around us. And as long as this present soul can be usefully so employed, presumably, we'll make arrangements for it to remain. If it isn't of any more use in this way, then what would be the purpose for its continued existence? We have a realistic viewpoint, and what human beings think of as death, which is the passing of the human soul, means very little. It means very little to the angel of life who is in command, in the sense that its value is based in right use for particular purposes in a specific aspect of the unfoldment of the creative cycle. If I am the way, the truth, and the life, death means nothing. It doesn't exist. That the substance that composed the human soul may be reintroduced into the natural creative cycles on earth is quite satisfactory. That, presumably, is what should happen. We find in the natural cycles of living that we eat and drink day by day. We stay alive that way. Of course, we breathe as well and do other things, but we also excrete. That's as necessary, isn't it? There is something taken in, there is something left behind. This is all natural in the cycles of living. So with the incarnate angel of life, there is a body and a mind and a heart, a human soul received, and various aspects of waste are left behind day by day from this human soul. Where is the mystery? Where is the mystery of so-called death? At that point, just a little more is left behind. That's all. From the standpoint of the angel of life, that is all that is happening. It is human souls who bewail their passing because they have this sense of separation and isolation and fear. Our human forms are temples of the living God, and we are each the gods that inhabit them. Today is the 4th of July, a fine day everywhere. In America, today is celebrated as Independence Day, commemorating the Declaration 246 years ago of the United States as a nation independent of Great Britain. I'm certain that far above and well beyond the external facts and factors involved at that time and since, the USA was founded to play a special part in the spiritual regeneration of humanity. A majority of Americans have pride in the social freedoms that most citizens enjoy. I'm thankful for those too. Under a highly authoritarian government, we might be restricted from assembling as we do, for example. But individual freedom is not an end in itself, contrary to what many apparently believe. It has a greater purpose. Those of us who live in countries and societies where there is more openness and fewer arbitrarily imposed controls are indeed blessed. There's a true reason for this. It's certainly not to have license to be more self-serving and self-centered. We rightly count our blessings for external freedoms. But how very much more richly blessed are our body temples by the angels of life vibrantly present in our flesh and in our consciousness. The real purpose of our bodies, minds, and hearts begins to be known as they become independent of the control of external influences. If independence means anything, to me it's this. Rising up and coming out of submission to externals, we accept and come into the experience of identity in angelic being. Knowing, being one with our true eternal selves. everything makes sense. I don't mean to say by that statement that the insane world of human making makes sense. It doesn't. But we can see and understand why it is the way it is. We are thus free in the world just as it is. Wise spiritual leaders and teachers of all flavors and sorts correctly promote the premise that one must be free within one's circumstances before one can become free from them. Let's not wait around for a restoration of an Edenic state for everybody. The only way that can possibly come about for you and me is to be our divine selves in expression in the circumstances we find ourselves in, no matter what they are. Of course, none of us are soloists. We are inexorably connected with fellow human beings, whether, humanly speaking, we like it or not. The more we are our true angelic selves in experience and expression, the more obvious this truth becomes. In elevated spiritual perspective, we know the whole body of humankind to be an entity, a single body, composed of innumerable subconsciously coordinated components. Every part, every person has a true purpose, though not many are conscious of it. But in angelic vision, we see the interrelatedness and interconnectedness of what to most appear to be disparate factions. This collective worldwide human body is a reflection of a collective angelic body composed of all the angels of life currently incarnate in human form. Just as our personal physical bodies have intricate design, the collective reveals evidence of design to those who see. Our physical bodies have a single highest point, a vibrational apex, we could say, in the pineal gland. Is there something analogous to a collective pineal gland in the body of humanity? Yes, necessarily so. Does that defy mental definition? Pretty much, so let's not try to define or explain it. We know it by personal participation. Then no explanation is necessary anyway. The apex of collective divinity in the inner sense is the primary archangel for this world. It is said the Great Pyramid in what is Egypt today was constructed long ago as a symbol of the design of archangelic being in form on earth. That structure hasn't had an apex, a capstone, for as long as human history goes back. But it originally did, and it is meant to. All the essences of the pyramid, the whole pyramid, are contained in the apex point of the capstone. In fact, the pyramid itself may be seen as an expansion of that apex point. I've long appreciated an illustration which makes this clearly understandable. Picture the apex in place. Now imagine raising the base of the pyramid up toward it. There are successively smaller and smaller pyramids as the base is raised, until finally the whole pyramid is but a single point. Human minds might imagine that as one rises in the pyramid, that everything becomes narrower and more exclusive as one approaches the capstone and the ultimate apex. But there's an apparent paradox here. The higher levels are not more restrictive and exclusive, but actually quite the opposite. The higher one goes in the design symbolized by the pyramid, a pyramid is just a geometric representation, we remember, the more the whole design is visible all around. In other words, the closer to the apex one is, the more all-inclusive and all-encompassing one's view and understanding becomes. This is the view from the mountaintop, as it is put in many spiritual teachings. The oneness of all is evident from this inner apex point. Living at the apex, we recognize others who also live in this finest of places. We know them and they know us without explanation. I'm not talking about necessarily appreciating one another's hereditary humanness. That can be lovely. But it can and often does just get in the way. We all have our outer foibles and petty weirdnesses. In angelic identity, residing at the apex point, we see and know and love that angelic presence in others, no matter all the human stuff. This is how oneness is known in actual experience. Immediately as we are at home in this place where we truly live, knowing ourselves as angels of life, there appears a wonder in the heaven of our awareness. The very archangelic Lord of all, in whom we live and move and have our being as individual angels of life. Among many other things, we thus know that his coming on earth is not a future event, but a present experience in our own earths now. In this, and by reason of this ineffably glorious holiness, everything is transformed. Everything is made new. So when someone we know slips their mortal coil and the Eternal One leaves a remnant body vehicle behind, we understand the creative process. Where is the mystery? Martin said. We're thankful for the life lived, as we are for our friend Tessa. And we're thankful for its timely conclusion in form. All is just right. Many of us aren't spring chickens anymore ourselves. And our times will come too. In angelic identity, it is but a changing of clothes. I suspect we'll be seeing a lot more of this in the world. Our human forms are temples of the living God. And we each are the gods that inhabit them. Just so, the whole of humanity is meant to be the dwelling place on earth of the Lord Most High. As we receive the fire of his loving presence by extending it into the world around us, we view the world in his perspective. And it all rises. Inexorably, can't help it, and is transformed. That's how we accomplish what we're here to accomplish. When we assemble like this, we temporarily create a living symbol, a mini pyramid, in which the essences of the whole are present, to the extent that this is a clear, focused experience for each of us. What emerges thereby is powerful and uplifting and life-giving. It is indeed a service to our Lord, a service to the world. And we use what is at hand to connect, such as today, celebrating the marvelous spirit that we knew as Tessa, released into far greater size than previously. In a way, it describes our role for our whole presence, our whole purpose. So it is wonderful to have these times together, to do this together.